The policy on MSM blood donations has long been discriminatory. But we know, and Canada has learned through strong, unfortunate experience, that the safety of our blood supply is something that we have to anchor in science.
Is the blood ban donation for gay men going to end? Justin Trudeau has promised it many times. So far, it hasn't happened. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist with the Toronto Sun. You may have heard that Canada Blood Services is out there saying they are in desperate need of more donors. At the same time, the government and the Canadian Blood Services continues to say that there is a ban on donations by gay men. Any men that have sex with other men, you are banned from donating blood. Now, the Blood Services and the government have said this is going to end, so why hasn't it happened? Conservative MP Eric Duncan joins me now. He's the MP for, let me try and get this straight, Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry in Eastern Ontario, and joins me now. Eric, let's back up a bit first and talk about why there was a ban on gay men donating blood in the first place. This goes back to the early days of AIDS, and I think everyone would say back then, all right, sounds like it makes sense. But is that why it was there, and why is it still in place now if it doesn't make sense?
Well, exactly. Well, Brian, thank you very much for having me on today. And exactly part of this is an education for Canadians that ask the question. And you're exactly right. This policy came into place because of the HIV/AIDS crisis in the 1980s. And in today's day and age, thankfully, we've seen a serious decrease in the number of cases, but also as well, science and technology, the testing regimens have been astronomically improved since then as well. But unfortunately, this policy is very outdated and not reflective of the reality of the situation today. And just to say, part of the education process is every single donation that comes into Canadian Blood Services or HEMA Quebec is screened, and the technology is amazing. It can pick up very quickly, and with a lot of progress that's been made over the years, any infections or any issues that may come from a blood donation. So again, the policy that's in place.
Let me just interrupt there then. So gay or straight, doesn't matter. Your blood is being tested for any blood-borne diseases. Exactly. And we know that HIV/AIDS is not exclusive to gay men. So why then, if everything is being screened, does this still exist as a policy?
Well, and that's a good question. And particularly, it's more frustrating when we look what the solution is. I think part of the thing is, it's not only to say, wow, this is really outdated for today's day and age and doesn't reflect the reality we're in, but also the solution is quite simple. It should not matter your sexual orientation. And Brian, I'll use an example. If there's a monogamous gay couple living in downtown Toronto that or simply an exclusive relationship among themselves, they should not be disqualified simply because they're gay and having sex with each other. They're just as safe as a straight couple to be able to donate, yet simply the fact of their orientation, they're disqualified. Now, somebody, gay or straight, if they have multiple sex partners in 3 months or have, behavior-based questions that are more risk, they should not be allowed to donate. Bottom line is, don't base it on orientation, base it on behavior. Simple solution.
Now, Eric, just so I understand, it used to be a lifetime ban for men who have sex with men. Then it was 5 years, then 1 year. Now it's if you haven't had sex in 3 months, I guess that is some sort of progress, but it still says that an awful lot of people will not be able to donate.
Exactly, Brian. And so if you've a man that's had sex with a man, if you're gay, bisexual, trans, once in 3 months, you're disqualified. You are disqualified, not eligible to donate. But I go back to the example. If you're a monogamous couple and you're just in a relationship with yourselves, what danger, what infection is coming into that relationship that would affect that blood? It doesn't. But if you're a couple that is gay by yourself and had sex 2 weeks ago, you're disqualified simply because you're gay. If you were straight and that were the case, it'd be no problem. So bottom line is, it just creates a perception and a discrimination and a stigma to say there's something wrong by being gay. And again, it's not safe. It's not science-based. It's outdated. And people look at it and just shake their head to say, no, if you're a monogamous, safe couple in an exclusive relationship, you should be able, if you're eligible, if you meet all the other questions in the questionnaire, just like anybody else, you should be allowed to donate. Why that's not the case and why that takes 7 years of research is beyond me.
I'm just shaking my head at this, Eric. I think most men would say they would prefer sex more than once every 3 months. And beyond that, how does the government regulate it? You know, I think a lot of people would just lie about that fact. They'd say, well, I'm in a monogamous relationship. I'm safe. I'm just going to tell them that, no, I haven't done it in a while.
Well, and that's through the questionnaire, and that's the numerous questions. And just to give a bit more information, Brian, I go back to where the science and technologies come a long way. They can detect anything in a blood supply, but there's a window period of about 14 to 21 days, 2-3 weeks, where if somebody picks up an infection of some sort, hepatitis, HIV, it's not detectable in that testing right away. So that's why they ask that huge long list of questions. And going back to that, it's the questionnaire. They rely on people to give the information that way.
But Canadian Blood Services hasn't moved on this despite political calls for it to happen. So are they claiming that there's a scientific reason for not doing it?
Well, they're claiming the need to do more research and make the change. And what we're seeing, and that's what part that bothers me is every Canadian wants to keep the blood supply safe. We don't want to go back to the tainted blood scandals back around the time I mentioned in the 80s, where people were infected with hepatitis or AIDS and people died from that. We've been thankful, and I've got to give credit where credit's due, we all do, to our blood supply system and all the workers. It's been decades without any case whatsoever in the system. So that's positive. But they are also very slow and hesitant to change. And on something like this, Brian, we're not saying, or the advocates for change aren't saying just open the floodgates and get rid of the questionnaire.
Right now, Eric, we've got Canadian Blood Services saying they're short 30,000 doses, I guess, and for lack of a better word. They need 30,000 units of blood. They need 30,000 donors to step forward. Doesn't this make sense that now is the time that they end the blood ban?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is the irony of where this issue has become more relevant during COVID, because with the pandemic, they haven't had as many of their regular supporters coming out to donate blood. There's more demand than ever before as surgeries are backlogged and then spiked in terms of openings and reopenings. So now is the ideal time. Make a safe change. Allow men who can safely donate. Their blood is tested. They can go and donate and help contribute to eliminating this backlog. And Brian, one of the things I think is important, and I always mention this in my comments, is that people say, well, I'm going to boycott this because I'm an ally and I don't like this rule. I know there's many gay men that say, don't do that. We don't need people to boycott Canadian Blood Services. Everybody that wants to give blood or can give blood should do that. The answer to this is not a boycott. It's Canadian Blood Services and our Prime Minister and Liberal government making the change safely and quickly. And I think at the end of the day, a net positive for everybody involved.
Justin Trudeau has made this a political issue. He campaigned on it in 2015. I remember him holding a ceremony on the front lawn of Parliament Hill. I believe he brought out Randy Boissonneau, a gay Liberal MP from Edmonton. And they had a big rah rally talking about how they were doing this. That was 2016, Eric. It hasn't changed, and he's still using it as a political tool. I want you to explain, as both a conservative and a gay man, how does he get to keep doing this and say to people, I'm going to do it, I'm your friend, I'm your ally? It seems to me like he's promising things he can't deliver on.
Well, it's part of Justin Trudeau's continual pattern of being fake, saying one thing and doing another, having a different standard. The part that bothers me is we've asked lots of questions in through different means. I've challenged Patty Hajdu. I've challenged the Prime Minister on this, and they go and say, oh, it's independent. It's not our decision to make. It's not our call. It's Canadian Blood Services. They've got to do the research first.
And that's why when we got elected in 2015 with a commitment to end the blood donation ban, we heard that the science was not there to be able to do it. We said, okay, well, here's millions of dollars for the Canadian Blood Services and HIMA Quebec to do the research necessary to be able to eliminate that ban safely so that we can still have a safe blood supply and we can move forward on ending discrimination against the LGBT community.
What bothers me and what is shallow of the Prime Minister and the Liberal government is they have no problem during an election campaign going out and telling gay men or men who have sex with men, we'll go and fix this, we'll end it. Then after the election, we call them out and say, just keep your promise. Oh, that's not us, it's independent.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, why don't you go and make it during an election campaign? You go to Toronto Centre, you go to University of Rosedale, you go to downtown Edmonton and promise gay men, say, look, vote for us, we'll solve the problem. And then you turn around and you attack others when they call you out for it. So again, if you could promise it during an election campaign to get votes, pardon my language, you damn well pretty well have a plan, should have a plan, and we're calling them out. The Minister of Health has the power to make this change herself. She refuses to do it. And in contrast, Brian, there's been news reported the last month or so. There was a gay man that took the government to court to hold him to account and say, this is discrimination. It is wrong. There's a safe solution. Do it. They went to court to try to silence him. So now they're doing the opposite now of not only breaking their promise, they're trying to silence gay men from asking them to keep the promise they made during an election campaign. People wonder why Liberals get a bad name or elected officials get a bad name. This type of fakeness and double standard and just hypocritical talk is exactly why. And Justin Trudeau and the Liberals don't like being called out for it. That's for sure.
A final question to you, Eric. Do you see this ever changing? I mean, we're being told could happen later this year, but I'm sure you've heard possible deadlines before. Do you see this ever changing?
Hopefully someday. I mean, I give credit to the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson's Conservative government. In Israel, with all the challenges going on in Israel, the brand new coalition government, the first 24 hours of the new coalition government last month, they made the change to say, we're going to change the questionnaire to make it behavior-based and end the discrimination. And Justin Trudeau needs 6-7 years of studies to go and do this. So I'm optimistic because of the pressure we're putting on. We're getting lots of people. And Brian, if I can make a quick plug, endthebloodban.ca is a website we've created with some stories and some information about this and how people can add their voice. We're getting growing momentum. More journalists, more Canadians are learning about this and calling out the government. And Canadian Blood Services has finally said, oh, well, we plan to, by the end of this year, to put an application in for Health Canada to review. They know it's wrong. They know it's outdated. They know what the safe change to make is. They just lack the political will to do it. And that's what they rightfully deserve of being called out for. And that's what we're going to keep the pressure on until they make the change. We don't need it to be years. It can be made much quicker than that and made very safely. That keeps the blood supply safe and allows numerous gay men, thousands, to safely donate in the country and save lives. That's what it should all be about.
All right, Eric, thanks so much for this. Something tells me we will hear about this issue on the campaign trail, but this time not just from Justin Trudeau, also from you, Erin O'Toole, and the Conservative Party as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Let us know what you think. Drop us a line down below. Make sure you hit subscribe and, of course, share this on social media.